What's going on, creators? Just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about getting into the end state, and this is kind of a deep dive into like Neville Goddard and the law of assumption, but also I just believe it's like a biblical example of how we're supposed to spiritually be walking in the Spirit according to the Bible, is living in the end state, which is ultimately recognizing that you're blessed right here, right now, that the kingdom of God is at hand right now, and that's within you, as according to Jesus, and applying a lot of these things. Neville Goddard's style with the law of assumption is almost a little bit more tangible on some level, but he's drawing from scriptures, but like his take on it's really easy to follow, and it's easy to apply. And the more that you do it and apply it for yourself, the more you start to see how reality starts to mirror back these inner states of consciousness as you become more and more mindful and aware. That the seeds that you plant in the subconscious, just the narratives going on all day long, all during the present moment, just these thoughts, these imaginings, and that's great when you understand that. And that's what I believe the difference between being cursed and being blessed is, because whether they're fearful, limiting, hellish, satanic thoughts and beliefs, or heavenly, divine, loving, whatever, it doesn't matter. And that's where it becomes kind of intense, because it's like if you're constantly just telling yourself worst case scenarios and limiting thoughts and beliefs about yourself and your body and just the future and just all this chaos going on in the world. If you're spending the present moment just letting that shit just impress your subconscious mind, it's only a matter of time before that starts to become externalized into the screen of space. The world that you're living in, your perception of it, that's going to be the world you're living in, and it's like, you don't have to live in those kinds of like worst case scenario, hellish environment. I mean, you don't have to do that, and it's like, most people aren't aware of that, though, and that's why it's important to start to learn about the power of awareness in general. And to me, awareness is only just becoming mindful, being still, and becoming one with the observer of thoughts. And in that, I believe that's when you are one with the divine mind, because the subconscious mind, really, when you stop and think about all of the miraculous things that we give it credit for, is almost like a divine attribute, really. When you stop and think about all the micro fucking moves and just me sitting here communicating to you, it's like my balance is being sorted out by my subconscious mind. My vocal cords are being vibrated somehow without me really understanding how that works. Meanwhile, I ate lunch today, and that's being miraculously turned into energy, I guess, shit from my body, I guess. But like, water is just filtering through my kidneys and everything else. And it's just like, meanwhile, I have no idea about all that, At nighttime, it creates entire realms with people I've never met before, having elaborate stories, and just, it goes on and on and on. The more that you really just but anyway, when you become the observer of the thoughts, you become connected with that same observer type vibe, and then you can see what's being impressed as these thoughts come in and pass, and you can start to feel how your energy is being affected by, whether or not they're true thoughts or thoughts that are in error, and you can do that by how they feel. Infinite intelligence has a perspective and a point of view, and has, given us a guidance system to be able to discern truth from error. And so much of our old mindset was just not understanding how to impress our subconscious mind, and how that then externalizes into our life situations. Look at everything going on, your finances, your health, your marriage, your relationship, your family, all of it. Everything is an externalization of consciousness, your consciousness, and is reflecting back to you everything that you can handle based on your faith, ultimately. And as wild as that sounds, like, well, no fucking way, Mike, because I would be a billionaire if that was true. And it's like, you have exactly as much money as you allow yourself to have. And it's like, I've seen it play out so many times that it's just like people limit themselves with the stories that they tell themselves about money. It's like, well, at 100 grand a year, then you can, be giving and you can take care of people, but you're not being greedy and selfish, blah blah blah. And it's like, who told you that? It's like, what, if you got somebody making 10 grand a year and they're like 100 grand, what are you talking about? You can be good at 35. And it's like, you can get all in these circle jerks when it comes to all these things, but all of it's just beliefs, programmings. It's like, God is rich, according to the Bible, and God is within you. So it's like, you are one with wealth and abundance. When you realize that your subconscious mind is that divine attribute that's already within you and capable of manifesting all of those things for you, drawn to you, just as easily as scarcity is repelling these things, those beliefs of scarcity and separation that push what you do want away, which what you do want is just love, ultimately. All of these things that we get backwards, where it's like chasing the shadow of like, oh, well, love is in all of these external things, but realizing more and more so, just through experience, that everything in creation is a shadow of the spiritual, of the consciousness. You get it in consciousness first. You imagine, but then more importantly, it's in the belief that God's the rewarder of that. It's like, and it says it clear as day in the Bible that God rewards our faith. It's like, you have to believe that God is, and that God is a rewarder of those that diligently seek. And so it's like, okay, well, my old cursed mindset constantly looks at God as being a punisher, but obviously that's a limiting belief, or maybe an error in thinking that the Holy Spirit can easily start to transmute into like, oh wait, what the Bible actually says is that God's a rewarder of those that diligently seek, and that Jesus started. The whole thing is intertwined in your spiritual just understanding of your Creator, how much that makes sense, I guess. But like when it comes to impressing the subconscious mind more and more consciously and deliberately, it's really about understanding who God is, and who God is in relationship with you, and what God's will is in relationship with you. And once you realize that there's not all this separateness, part of the errors in thinking is putting God outside on a cloud in space, or like in the sky somewhere. But I believe that that's part of the error, and not to say that God isn't in the external world, because it's both things. It's all things. There is only consciousness. So it's like, yeah, everything out here in the physical world is God's consciousness externalized, and all of these different words made flesh, thoughts made manifest. That's another way to kind of look at creation, as all of these are existing in consciousness first, and it's all connected in consciousness. Although, when we look at it through our old mindset, was, oh, I see all these separate things. As I don't see it how it's all connected in consciousness. I see that as a person, like a brain in the body over there that's separate from me, and I see that as a tree that's separate from me, even though it's all part of the consciousness. It's like a dream. It's all interwoven. It's like a realm. It's all part of the God oneness understanding. But that's an evolving understanding. So it's like everybody's at different levels of that too. So it's like it's easy to sometimes point at, well, no fucking way, Mike, because of this over here. But in a lot of those illusions, I'd say, is maybe the best way to say it, is in realizing that there's a different way to look at it. My dad dying, for example, when that happened, a lot of people look at death and dying as a really, it can really fuck with people, and it fucks with lots of people. Have that fear, and that, not to say that I don't, face that. I face that fear every day. Whenever I start to be confronted with that fear, I bring the future to the present moment and face it right here, right now. With like the full. Well, let's just do it then. It gets to a point where it's just like putting it down this future that I'll have to deal with. It fucks with the present moment in a lot of different ways, because it's there in the consciousness. It's not going. It's not. You're not changing states. Part of the new state is realizing that you are eternal, that you don't die, that death is an illusion, that you're part of consciousness, and in that you're in God's mind. And for you to actually be non-existent, that would mean God would have to be non-existent, and that's not possible, because everything is made out of God. And so it's like, but again, that's part of like those unfolding like realizations, like, oh wait, what did you say? It's like, but as you kind of unpack that and you kind of look at that more and more, so then it's like, oh, I'm starting to see why I shouldn't be fearful of this event. But with my dad dying, dealing with a lot of like family members that they weren't obviously thinking this way, and they're calling and threatening the staff at the hospital, and creating all sorts of drama on top of my dad dying for like 10 days or something like that, dying on Christmas, but like the whole thing proceeding, the whole thing was wild, intense, so many emotions and everything else. But you can look at that experience, and in that, I got taught a lesson of letting go. It got to be, and kind of what I mean by that, is like when my dad was experiencing those things, I was just in kind of like a prayer mode the whole time of like, this is not real, or, and not looking at like battling it, really trying to stay conscious the whole time, basically, and just do my best, and, face that situation, and not to give fear to my dad, who was like, dealing with that, but the whole thing was reminiscent of like, I got led to Bible verses of like Jesus on the cross, really making that real, it's like, yeah, you hear these stories about, Jesus being dragged through town and spit on and beat to shit and laughed at and, snitched on, all these things, and then getting fucking murdered, and before like succumbing to it, and just like brutally murdered too. I mean, it wasn't just like, boom, you're dead. It's like, boom, we're going to fucking put you on this thing. You're going to suffer for hours and die in a fucked up way. And so, seeing, my dad just like dying like that, it was just like, it was really reminiscent of that. And I got led to a lot of scriptures about, it's like letting go, surrendering, not constantly just praying for, being attached. That was the other part of it. It's like, I knew just metaphysically, the more that you're attached, it'll prevent, the manifestation from happening, because you're so invested in the outcome. It's like you almost have to be ready, like able to just like completely not give a fuck, and then it happens. It's like, because there's no more resistance. So there's a space where there's attachment, but there's a lot of attachment because of resistance and not wanting to surrender and this and that. So for me, from my perspective, I wanted my dad to stay in this realm, and miraculously recover, and and there was a period he was supposed, they claimed, was going to die. In 3 days, he was unconscious, and they were talking about like disconnecting him from everything and just letting him die, which was some more drama. But the thing of it was, then he came back, and it was like miraculous. They didn't have any explanation for it. So for me, it was like, oh, okay, 3 days in the shadow of death. It was really symbolic. And I've talked about this in depth, when it was going down. But long story short, it got to a point where, then there was like this spiral of fear and shit. And the way the doctors were talking to me, and this is part of some of this weirdness that starts to happen the more that you're just kind of like spiritually keyed into the present moment, you'll be able to just draw things out of people. And like the doctor was like coming up to me and talking, like reflecting a lot of shit back to me, where it's just like, because he was like, well, the next fear we have to challenge is this. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking? If the next fear we got to, it's like, who are you? And like, that kind of weirdness. And like, it got to this point though, where I could tell my dad didn't want to keep enduring and all this shit. And it got to a point where it was like, am I being selfish, wanting to, I want this outcome because of me, but what does my dad actually want? And meanwhile, all these people are just really just in his face and just like, oh, don't leave and keep fighting, and and it's just like, is that helpful? It's like, and it got me in a change of mind to a point where it's like I wanted for him what he wanted for him, in the sense that I overheard, it was brought to my awareness that, he just wanted to go to heaven. He just wanted to go home or whatever. And to me, it was like, well, that's what I want for him too. And when those two things came together, then it was just like, oh, it's like a birth, and it's like, I don't know. And in that experience, being able to completely just let go of my, what I wanted, for him to experience what he wanted, in that was a type of love I've never experienced since, and it was like empowering and powerful, and even since, it happening on Christmas, then it led to a whole bunch of like understanding of like, Christ within, being born, and just a lot of spiritual, and plus, it's like, even in the present moment now, for anybody that's experienced loss of a loved one or whatever, there's like a tendency of like the old mindset when you think about that being, to think of them in the present moment as being dead. But that, I feel like, is for one, a bogus belief that you're impressing the subconscious mind with, and it's reflecting back to you a lot of this shit that's just like, oh no, they're gone, they're separate. But what you can start to do, and not to lead people down like a fucked up rabbit hole or whatever, is just to realize that they're not dead. They're alive in heaven right now. And as you give to them visions of heaven that you have within yourself, what would they like? My dad's on a beach right now. He's not dead. He's on a beach. He's enjoying himself. He's fishing, or, hanging out with friends and playing pool and hitting on women. I don't know. He's just having a good time, and then, extend that to the loved one. And as you do, then you start to feel that energy coming simultaneous back to you, as you start to realize you're not separate from that loved one. And in the present moment is the eternal now. And so, whether we see them or not, that doesn't, and this is like an evolving belief for me too, but it's like the more that you're able to connect with their essence in the present moment and look at them as being alive, like you'd look at Jesus as being alive in the present moment, he's, and you start learning that through prayer and seeing how, asking, believing leads to receiving every single time. And the more that you connect in consciousness like that, the more that you start to see these things that show you that that death is an illusion, and you start to learn that through personal experience more and more so as you start to evolve your own beliefs. But I kind of went off on this tangent, but hopefully that is helpful. Because there's a lot of people that are dealing with death and loss, and some people can really spiral. It's like, I just recently seen my grandparents in the nursing home. And it got me in a fucked up state of mind, because it's like, it's really the first time, my grandpa, he hasn't recognized me for a long time, but he doesn't make it obvious, and like he's just, I look at his condition as bringing him into a lot of presence, and like he may not understand or know who I am, but he knows who he is. It's like he knows I am, if that makes sense. It's like he's like getting closer and closer to, like, as like these narratives and these stories and this past is, evolving away. It's like he's getting more present in that I am awareness, and you can just feel that energy, even though it's like, hey, do you remember when I was 5 years old and we used to catch bass and this and that? And it's like, no, but at the same time, then my grandma, it was the first time, I could tell she just had no idea who I was either, and it gets me to this weird thing, because we went there because my grandpa's 90th birthday or whatever. They don't really know how old he is, because he was born in Alabama or Arkansas, and this is where I find like racism irritating, because people like talk about like, yeah, there's like black people that pick cotton and shit. I get that, but poor white people used to pick cotton in those fields and shit too, and my grandpa was one of those people. And like when he was like in, I can't remember, Arkansas or Alabama, one of the two, but he was born at home, and like no birth certificate or anything, and like at the same time the Korean War was like going on, and he looked at that as like an opportunity to like join the military to kind of get out of his situation or whatever. and he had no idea how old he was, and the government didn't give a shit at the time because just the situation was like normal, it was like somewhat normal, and his mom was already dead by the time he was doing this, so who knows, that, and she knew it when his actual birthday was, but yeah, there's that drama. But so he just like made it up when he joined the military, and they just kept it. and he remembered lying. Like, I think, lied, he was younger and said he was older, so he might not be 90, but it's around there, it's close enough. And like, I told my grandma when I was there, because we were like, yeah, we're here to see, for his birthday. And, I told her again, even though she didn't recognize who I am or who I was, whatever. I get like, oh, you don't say I am. It's like, I get it, because that's like God's name or whatever is I am. And so what are you saying I am to? But it's like, it was one of those situations where it was like, oh, it's for his birthday. And I told her I don't believe in time. And, typical, which goes on in my family is like, I get looked at like I'm like the lunatic for years or whatever. But it doesn't change the fact that it is only ever now. And it's like, I look forward to the day, when people have realized they've already died and are starting to wake up from that. It's like, hey, still now, but it is what it is. And a lot of these types of things are just, I feel like exercising and getting your mind saturated in, hey, awareness. Let's really kind of put a label on it. But like when it comes to awareness, it's just that the process of being mindful and observing your thoughts. Be aware of what you're thinking. Are you thinking in terms of like, hey, this is empowering. This makes me feel alive and full of energy and full of life and vitality. Thinking this way. I'm in alignment with healing, because God is healing, and that healing is in my subconscious mind. We're one. That divine mind is in me. It's never been separate from me. And really starting to understand how powerful that is, because there's a tendency, and I catch myself doing this all the time, where in prayer, and by prayer I'm like conscious speaking to God, realize that God hears your thoughts, is listening to your mind, and then responding to it, externalizing these things, realizing that, because like part of that, like the old mindset is like praying to a God in space that's separate from you. And in doing so, it's counterproductive to what you're actually praying for, because then you're looking, and that's, I think, maybe a stumbling block to the law of attraction that can happen, is it almost creates like this idea that there's this external force to satisfy, through action, but it's through faith, and that's a biblical way of understanding it too, is realizing that it's what you believe is ultimately what gets reflected. And the more that you believe that God is within you and hears your thoughts and corresponds something in reality to give you the knowledge to answer your question, because a lot of this stuff is like the words fail, but the experience really solidifies an understanding. And so it's like once you like pray for something, believe that you've received it, and then you'll be it'll be done to you as you believe. If you're believing, oh, it's coming from somewhere out in space to me, I feel like creates separation. And so I feel like it's important in awareness to realize that, hey, these thoughts are being listened to and being corresponded to by this law of consciousness, that what we reap, we sow, or what we sow, we reap. I think it sounds backwards. We plant the seeds and then experience the harvest is another kind of biblical metaphor. But like with that being said, I think I'm gonna balance. I'm gonna get dinner going, and I don't think there was anything else I wanted to bring to you guys today, and gals, so and this is part of like maybe just the way I talk or whatever. Hey guys, girls, guys, people, humans, entities, consciousness, whatever you connect with, I guess. But with that being said, I think I'm a balance. I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. Put it to good use. Hopefully, I was a good steward of your attention. I appreciate you. You'll be anywhere in time and space, and you chose to be right here, right now with me, and I appreciate it. And hopefully, I was a good steward of that and strengthened you on some level by just this content. So with that being said, I think I'm about. So till the next now, God bless.